Today we talk about something incredibly important, of which I'm usually a pessimist, Australian politics, and what change will Malcolm Turnbull coming into power as the new Prime Minister of Australia have. And funnily enough, I actually have an optimistic view of who Turnbull is, what he's capable of, and the potential changes I think we will see as early stage entrepreneurs in the coming months and years here in Australia.
On a mission, had to listen and just observe on the world stage. This life is my concert, that's why I work for months and I feel like it's not work.
Today we are taking a question that I think is highly important regarding the recent changes to government. The question's coming from Early Links on Twitter, who says, Jack, what changes do you think the new MP Malcolm Turnbull will create for entrepreneurs? And this is a really good question. Early Links, I think this is Jackie Peel, who's a good friend of ours. Really good question. And in my view, this is a very exciting development to the government of Australia, to the nation of Australia, and actually to small business owners and entrepreneurs and startup businesses, particularly in the tech space, right? I'm naturally a pessimist when it comes to politics, right? Something changes and I go, is it actually going to change anything? And the more you dig into and the more you research and the more familiar you become with Malcolm Turnbull and look at his views and look at the vision that he's painting, look at the language that he's using, look at the leadership style that he's implementing, I actually do think that Malcolm Turnbull being the Prime Minister of this country will flow through at a practical level right through to early stage entrepreneurs. If we look at the background of Malcolm Turnbull, right, he's been a lawyer, he's been an investor, he's been a bit of an entrepreneur, he's been a venture capitalist. You know, he came into Oz Email in '94 with an investment, you know, whispers say it's about $500,000. They exited that business in '99. Apparently his investment at that point was worth around $60 million, right? So he's had some very good entrepreneurial investment plays throughout his career. And what that means is he gets it. We've now got a Prime Minister that from a financial sense is worth almost $200 million, right? And that's only ever one measure, but it certainly speaks to the commercial and entrepreneurial and financial integrity of this man now being in a position, right? Now, how does that flow through? Firstly, there's a change in leadership style, in my view, massive. I'll talk about that in a second. And there's also going to be a change in policy substance, I think we'll see in the coming weeks and months. Leadership style. This is a Prime Minister who is valuing innovation, is valuing agility. One of my favourite quotes from Turnbull over the last couple of weeks has been, we're not looking to proof ourselves against the future, we're actually looking to embrace it, right? Which is just a refreshing approach, because a lot of the time when you hear governments or politicians talk about the future, or corporations or even universities, it's like, how do we future-proof ourselves? Like, the future is something we need to defend against. It's not. The challenges that the present world throws up and the challenges and opportunities of tomorrow are actually really exciting once embraced. And I believe that Turnbull is an individual and a Prime Minister who is moving to actually look at these challenges and embrace these opportunities. That's shown in, you know, his appointment of Christopher Pyne, for instance, who's become the Minister of Industry, Innovation and Science. In Turnbull's cabinet announcement, he said Christopher Pyne is now at the centre of one of the most important agendas of this government, right? Being industry, innovation, science, and how do we build a more agile government? How do we build a more agile corporate Australia? And how do we build a more agile environment that's conducive to early stage businesses growing and flourishing, you know, throughout the Australian economy? So all of that is really exciting. That, to me, is a significant change in leadership. You know, Turnbull references often, he says, you know, the most important, one of the most important considerations in any organisation is culture, right? We agree with that as entrepreneurs. We know that to be true. To hear the Prime Minister of Australia refer to the country as an organisation that needs to be managed and need to be led is actually refreshing. Because Australia is just a large organisation, at least it needs to be managed as such, while taking care of the people that are disadvantaged and less advantaged and all of that, and Turnbull's spoken about social welfare. However, to look at the country as an entity that needs a vision, that needs a direction, that needs a strategy is a substantial change in leadership, and is actually a leadership that I don't think I've seen in my lifetime from any politician, which is really refreshing. In terms of policy substance and change there, he's talking about changing different option schemes for early stage businesses. He's getting his hands dirty and visiting places like Fishburners over the road from our Entrepreneur Development Centre here in Sydney. He's talking to tech entrepreneurs like my good friend Jess Wilson, right, in terms of what needs to happen. So he's becoming very familiar, as is Christopher Pyne, as is the appointment of Wyatt Roy, who's now the Assistant Minister for Innovation, at the age of 25, and Wyatt gets it, right? So he's visionary leader, establishing a team, refocusing the priorities of the government and therefore the country, and that will mean we will see, in my view, policy shifts in the coming weeks and months, which is really refreshing as an entrepreneur with, a community of 100,000 entrepreneurs. I think we can, and I don't say this lightly, right? As I said earlier, my default position when it comes to anything political is one of pessimism. I'm actually optimistic about what Malcolm Turnbull and the Australian Liberal Party will now be able to achieve. So stay tuned. I think it's good news. Malcolm, we are cheering you on. That's the change. I think it's going to be really positive. Thanks for the question, Early Links. I look forward to chatting with you guys. Actually, before we go to that, what do you guys think of this change in government? Do you think, of what you have seen, what Turnbull's been talking about, of the potential policy changes that he's been talking about, what do you think the effect of Turnbull now being Prime Minister and shifting the agenda of the government, what do you think the changes that will have on entrepreneurs everywhere in Australia? Comments below. I'll be there. Let's have a discussion. Thanks for the question, Early Links. I look forward to speaking with you guys tomorrow. 'Cause I'm lining up the stars. I'm lining up the stars. Yeah, we here doing God's work. 'Cause tonight is